aren't showing up, or?
No, Rob's downstairs. I just seen Ben. I haven't seen Derwin or Jerry on yet.
Shoot him a message and make sure he gets in there doing that concrete, and he'll get lost in that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Here it is.
It's on the way up.
Okay, there it is.
Haven't seen Jerry and nobody's started.
All right. Call the meeting to order.
Oh, no, heaven forbid.
The Ward 6 is still an unfilled position. Commissioner from Ward 1 is not here yet, so we'll start without him. Okay. Okay, item number 2, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2019-2020 City of Enid budget. Aaron?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, we are scheduled to talk about 7 funds. They're highlighted here in green. It is a street and alley fund, capital improvement, street improvements, sanitary sewer, stormwater, water capital, and the capital project escrow fund. These are the page numbers for reference for you if you want to see the specific breakdown as we go through those, but they are listed individually on engineering's PowerPoint. Total proposed between all 7 of those funds this year is $14.7 million. As we look at that compared to the current year budget that we're in, you can see it's a $1.89 million increase. The amounts move between the funds depending on the priorities that are given from engineering and other staff throughout the city. The funding for all these projects, you can see there's 14.7 in projects, 12.28 million of that comes from EMA as a transfer to support those. The rest of the non-EMA revenues are made up of some gasoline and street and alley tax that comes in the street and alley fund. We also have interest throughout the funds, and then there's also some capital recovery pass-throughs that if we receive money, that get paid out. So if we don't collect those revenues, there will not be expenditures that go with those. Stormwater also has a fund balance that is drawing down some of the funds for that we talked about on that bridge project at the meeting on Monday night. And that's pretty much an overview of what engineering is going to cover tonight. They're going to go over each project and give you an update on that, and then we'll come back and talk about anything else related to city funds after that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say, as Chris gets ready to come up there, is that as we put this budget together as city staff, we try to capture the priorities that we think the commission has given us. We're not always perfect at doing that, so please ask questions. If you see something that you don't think is, or that's not in here that you think should be, let us know. And I guess vice versa, if something, something's not in here and it should be, or something's in here and it shouldn't be. So anyway, fire away, Chris.
Okay, thank you, sir. What we'll go over is what we've got planned currently for the upcoming FY capital improvement budget. The purpose obviously is to provide improvements to real properties and to provide major maintenance. As Aaron was saying, we've got street and alley, capital improvement, street improvements, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and water improvement. Looks like this year we're going to try to knock out 52 separate projects, and like she said, a little over $14 million. And we'll start off with the roadway maintenance on the street and alley fund. This funds are reserved for public works to utilize as they do some minor maintenance activities on unimproved streets, and some minor work on the improved street and other reconstruction efforts that they do that's within their manpower. Next up on the budget is the street improvements, and these primarily are for our heavy construction projects where we do major maintenance on it. What we're going to do this year is we've got a list of streets that we do every year that we do for major reconstruction. We coordinate that list with Public Works and with the city manager, come up with a finalized list. We're also going to try a pilot program this year where we can group some of the not quite so major reconstruction and do street repairs at a number of different locations, smaller. Public Works has done a great job of doing those small repairs throughout this past year. But the simple fact is they don't really have the manpower and the processes to do that efficiently. And so what we're going to try to do is take the list of things that they want to get to, build some processes, build a pilot project, and see if we can, if our processes and procedures will work to do that a little more efficiently. And we'll talk about that later. First and foremost, local street program. We've budgeted 1.5, same as we did last year. We currently have 3 streets that are in design. Those that they are East Maple, West Maple, and Oklahoma. And so we're doing the design on these. This is the biggest section of the ones that we're doing. It's kind of in need, and of course most of the streets in town are. And then West Maple, in just north of downtown, right here between Washington and Independence. This one's going to be probably a little more interesting for us on the design side because of the size and the parking, the proximity of buildings. And then this one up over here on West Oklahoma. The idea is to design them this year, construct them next year, and do complete reconstruction like we normally do. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to try a pilot project where we can do some street repairs. The intent of this program is to, of course, see if we can't improve some efficiencies on getting some work done on some streets. We've got a preliminary list of a dozen of those. We've picked 5 that we want to start with, see if our processes work, and then if they work and we have sufficient funds, which I suspect we will, we'll add additional streets as change orders as we go along.
Chris, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
During campaigning, one of the things that jumped out was there's too many potholes and we're not fixing them fast enough. And when I made inquiry, you guys were straightforward and said we don't have enough funding in that program.
Yes.
So give me some sense, are we 50% more, 20% more, or any more?
Roughly $500,000. The way we did it last year, like I said, engineering did their heavy street reconstruction, and as you know, if you're moving water lines, tearing up all the existing roads, putting in full streets, curb and gutter sections, addressing the drainage and sidewalks, and do a reconstruction, you don't get far for $1.5 million. You eventually get there, but you don't get far. Public Works was able to knock out a lot of smaller locations that you've seen around town, where curb sections had been busted up, drainage was problematic. It's just the process that we follow in our finance manual, where you get 3 quotes for every project, decide which one's the lowest quote, and then have them do the construction, and then inspect it, and then accept it. It's hard to get over many. So it looks to me like we're probably about $500,000 more.
We talked about a street. It's always alley fund. Whenever I look at this, I kind of question, what do we do with this fund in order to be able to address the alleyways? Or do we?
We don't address alleyways anymore.
Yeah, alleyway is exactly right. We used to maintain alleys when we picked up solid waste in the alleys. And since we have stopped doing that many years ago, more than a decade ago, we don't maintain alleys. So, and our challenge is with not having funding like we just discussed for streets, challenging to, but I know that may not be a good answer for you, but that's what's been going on.
Additionally, some of the funding that's in this project will be used for not only what we will do for reconstruction, concrete reconstruction of certain places in town, smaller projects. There's also an opportunity to utilize our in-house capability to do overlays with asphalt. The challenge with that, of course, is we have to look at it and make sure that the drainage is okay. You can't overlay a street that has a curb and gutter section unless you've got room for it in terms of not filling up the gutter. So those are going to be kind of handled one-off until we figure out how best to handle that. And so that's a coordinated effort between engineering and public works. Okay? Okay, here's the streets that we're going to start on. The one in there that's a little different from the rest of them is the removal of one of the roads that leads down into Government Springs south of 412 or Garriott. It's in pretty bad shape. I've got a location map for it. There's some pavilions that the Parks Department will relocate afterwards, after we're done or whenever they get around to it. But the idea is it's bad, let's get it out of here and focus on the other streets.
Yeah, and as you go through it, Chris, let me jump out there so the commissioners, as we look at this is a proposal.
Yes,
And you'll
absolutely.
see why we're proposing it. Some of you are familiar with the way it is already. So clearly, this would be fully vetted and approved by you before we would proceed doing that, but we'll tell you why and show you
Yes,
pictures.
and most of these will come back to you as contract awards before we actually start construction. So this is when, if you have streets that you want to add to it, he can get them to me, and we'll work on it.
How you get them to you is you get them to me,
Well, get them to
but I get them to you.
him, and I get them to me.
Do we
Got it.
have these slides?
I think we just sent these out
Yeah,
today.
these are, unfortunately, I was a little late getting these finalized.
So yes, you should have the slides.
Okay.
Okay, as you can see, this one's in pretty sad shape. As a matter of fact, how many of these aren't? But these are the ones that we picked. Obviously, we're picking for different level of construction. This is one that we think is going to kind of play on that easy side. This is that intersection right here on 412 or Willow, excuse me. And you can see that what we'll do is we'll take this out and go back with concrete and go back far enough to tie it in. Eisenhower, another one that's a potential overlay for this one, but it's long enough and it's a good straight run. But first we got to take a look at it and see what the drainage is. And then obviously we're going to be interested in taking a look at that structure right there and see what we're up against. Redbud, up here on the north of town and this is the Van Buren US 81 as it goes north and starts to curve. Another one that's in fairly bad shape. We'll take a look at that one. And then this is the road at Government Springs South. You can see that this one, there's this road here that runs into the private property, and a lot of the access is down 9th and 10th. And here's our fields and tennis courts. So what we're proposing to do is take this road out for a number of reasons. It's in very sad shape. As you can see, there's not a lot of rebuild that you can do to this road. It's used up. It is also in the floodway, which doesn't mean we can't. It just means where it's at, we're going to have to do some work to stabilize this channel bank so it doesn't erode our road away. Because if we're going to invest in a road, we're going to have to invest in that as well. And then these are the pavilions that they're thinking about relocating after we get started.
Well, as we thought about this, for your consideration, we thought about, well, my initial thought was, no, I don't know that we want to do that. But as we looked at it some more, it made some sense because as you know, coming in on that drive into Government Springs South, there's really nothing there. There's a couple of pavilions as you come in. There's some property to the east that we don't own. And the creek's right on the west side. So again, that's something you guys would need to approve for us to proceed on beyond just approving the budget. The main entrance in would be 9th Street then. You can also get in off of 10th Street as well, where the facilities are really in the back there. So that's something for you to consider, and we can ideas some more if you guys like it.
Is there any private property in that area that's going to limit their access to their property?
No, I don't believe there's any drives, but you can see those lots, and you can
Right.
see there's a road that goes into those lots. And I believe those lots, there may be one house
I
on.
believe there's one house in there.
So I think there might still be a for sale sign there, as you can recall. And remember, the casino was interested in that location at one time, but I think you've clearly told them no, so they haven't been back.
Okay.
Okay? And once again, you know, the plan is to use our, basically remove and replace standards that we use for engineering. So a little bit of check, validation on drainage and elevations, but mostly rebuild it to our standard. These are our sidewalk partnership projects. We've got $25,000 budgeted for each, the private side and the commercial side. This has become a very popular program for the community. We've helped out a lot of people. We usually end up consuming all the funds, and so we keep putting money into it, and it helps. Every little bit helps.
It is a popular program, and I think the commission was wise to develop this a few years ago. We typically always use up the money and could probably use more. A lot of this has been focused in the downtown area with sidewalk replacements on the commercial side anyway recently, and you've seen some things around Bell Jewelers, around the Knox building. We may have used some funds from this. I don't recall exactly on the Napoli's sidewalk.
We use some on Napoli's, and we use some on, do it? Yes,
Symphony.
at the Knox building and the Symphony.
I also think it's a program that could be developed and expanded more as we try to figure out what we want to do on the sidewalk ordinance. I think there's another study session coming up, Jonathan, for you on with MAPC on whenever that meeting is, and hopefully we can wrap up those recommendations from MAPC and bring them to council. But I know that, for instance, Bob Berry has talked about a sidewalk in front of Indian Hills, and I haven't reached out to him yet, but somebody's going to reach out to him soon and offer him this commercial sidewalk.
And sir, we have sent him the applications.
Outstanding. So we would like to work with him on that if he's open to it. That stretch alone that he's talking about may be expensive, and that alone might be more than this, but I think it might be nice. It might be a good use of resources. And certainly reaching out to Bob, he's passionate. I want him to be a friend of the city. And he can be.
And I will say that
is a friend of the city.
having this program available has made it possible for Bell Jewelers and the Knox building to solve a critical problem with a sidewalk over basements.
And just recently, Security National reached out for a stretch in front of their drive-through.
Yes.
Which next time you're driving down Independence, you'll be able to see it, because it's the wavy stuff that something happened, I don't know, tree roots or something's gotten in there and messed it up.
Okay? On property improvements, excuse me?
With the budget we've had in the past, you said we use mostly all of it. Are we running out like halfway through the fiscal year? Is it one of those things where, I'm just trying to get a sense of how much more popular it'd be. If we budgeted twice that much, would that be too much?
Well, about
Is it
no, actually, I think it works out pretty good. About 4 years ago, we had budgeted $50,000 each, and we were not using it all. But the popularity of the program has started to increase.
Okay.
And like Gerald likes to do, we can take money from other places.
Yeah. I like this
Savings.
approach much better
Yes.
than the approach where you have to try and get a waiver because you're going to put a shed in the backyard. I mean,
That's some of the things that we're looking at doing with
Yeah.
changing of the ordinances.
yeah. But
Well-
I like the nice way. This is the nice way. I like that.
Well, I will say that currently, the ordinance does not allow us to use these funds to put in new sidewalks that are required by ordinance.
Okay.
I know one of the considerations that may come to you, and Commissioner, you can talk about it more, but maybe a possibility to help solve the angst with developers when we force a sidewalk on them is to, if we force them or however we do it, we offer this, or if we don't force it and offer this.
Or we just make them build sidewalk, because it's part of
Or-
improving our community. Suck it up and build a sidewalk.
You guys will certainly, and the ordinance is the way it is, and it's not going to
Yeah.
change unless you guys can come to an agreement.
Right.
So,
Okay? Property improvement, we need to do,
there's the headline tomorrow.
yes,
I've said,
we need to do some maintenance on our chiller system here in the building. It's relatively straightforward. It'll be an easy do. We've also decided to add a little additional work to our landfill cell expansion. We ended up with some pretty good unit prices on our last bid that we recently received. So this will come to you as a change order to add additional units, and we'll capitalize on those prices. Public Works has a in-house project to upgrade the traffic monitoring along the Van Buren and the Garriott corridor. This is to provide better remote monitoring on those corridors. You'll recall from last year, we did some work on a few of the intersections already. The goal is to improve the rest of them on these corridors. We also have two projects in here also dealing with traffic control. One of them is to update and to standardize our controllers. We've got a problem where we've done a lot of different controllers around town, and that creates quite a maintenance problem when you have to deal with the logistics of replacing them. And they're also becoming obsolete. Same thing with detection. We used to use 4 cameras and cables. Technology has gotten a lot better now. We can use some single cameras, some wide-eye cameras, and some of our new communication technology. So this will help to standardize those other intersections. The goal, obviously, is to have all our traffic control using the same controllers, same detection. Makes maintenance and logistics a whole lot easier.
How long will a process like that take to?
For sure, 2 years, this year and 1 year more. Other than that, I can't really tell you, because this will really depend on how quickly we can get this implemented and what else Everett has Public Works doing.
are any of these the traffic control downtown?
I believe some of them are, but
Will
I
it allow us to better synchronize downtown traffic lights?
cannot answer that at this time.
I don't,
Can we,
I don't
Can we
think.
focus on that?
Yes, if you're asking us to focus there, we probably can, because I don't think this is focused, I think, on Garriott and Van Buren.
Well,
In
that's the
fact, we've done
previous
a-
one. These are,
no, this one was not specific as to that. And if we are buying new traffic control, if we're making any new investment in traffic control lights, then please God, can we get downtown to synchronize if we're buying new stuff anyway?
Everett, can you handle that?
Yeah.
I think he can answer your question, and I think he can do it.
What our plans are is after we update everything out on the main corridor, we're gonna take some of that older stuff and move it downtown where the clocks are not working properly. We have to go down there about once, twice a week to readjust the times on the clock to keep them all coordinated. So we're gonna be able to take some of these down there. We don't want no detection down there where we're getting it by camera or nothing like that. It's gonna be a really big mess. But we want the timing to stay right. And by doing this, we're gonna take some of that older stuff and update downtown also at the same
That
time.
doesn't seem to solve our problem of improving efficiency and reducing maintenance costs if we are.
Right, we're updating, and we're gonna update downtown as we're doing it, but we're gonna use some of the older stuff.
It
out
fixes
there.
the timing, is what it
Right, it
sounds
fixes the
like.
timing where we can keep it all
It fixes the timing. It also reduces the footprint of the older
Right.
cabinets, detectors,
we'll
and
continue
controllers.
upgrading as we go
So
along.
Okay.
as they do that, they create a stockpile of extra parts.
Right.
And we're actually I'm expecting for technology to get a little better before we try to synchronize with detection a four block downtown area. Because when you've added detection and trying to synchronize all those lights, it can create an issue.
Okay,
But we'll see.
kind of an answer.
Marshall?
Yeah, yeah,
You can hit four lights at it.
yeah. Yeah, I love the optics.
I will say too, can you just give a brief update that's related to this on the engineering study that we've been doing on the synchronization? Isn't that about done on
That is-
Garriott that works with this too?
That is just about done on how to synchronize the Garriott corridor. I have not seen that study yet, but it is in work.
So that's a conjunction, continuing push to improve our traffic signaling. We have noted any improvements in downtown as well that we'll be working on, so.
Please.
Van Buren would be nice.
Buren, yes, there's 3 or 4 blocks there that
Yes.
get you every time.
Okay? We're going to extend the landfill road that goes to the scale. This is a follow-on from last year's project where we built the approach to the scales. The intent was provide good, solid, concrete road for the approaches for the trucks to get up on, get some of that mud off them so they're not coming right out of the mud onto the scales. Reduces some of the issues associated with that. Additionally, there's a desire to improve the convenience center, that where we do our landfill transfers when it's really kind of muddy and messy upstairs, up on top of the hill. So it allows the public to drop their stuff off there, and it's later transferred to the top.
Isn't there that's Southgate Road there, right? Isn't the county planning on repaving Southgate Road near future, and how does that fit in with our plan?
Well, our plan, it doesn't really impact Southgate,
Yeah,
because our road construction is going to extend this concrete drive back another 300 so feet.
okay,
So we're not going to make it out there.
all right.
I have heard that the county is looking at Southgate.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional capital improvement is we've got a plan here to do some parking improvements, some transportation improvements at the soccer complex. We talked about this the other night at study session. You know, my number one priority is get Garland set up and the approaches to get the traffic safely on and off of Garland during soccer games. Once we get past that, we'll look at doing the parking. And of course, this is a multi-year agreement between us and the city and Enid Sports. And so this will come back again probably next year. Additionally, we're going to start the process of permitting a new area of landfill. Permitting is a multi-year project. It goes through DEQ. This is where our current landfill is at. This is the south side. And we own this property, and so we're going to look into extending the landfill south. Just get out ahead of the game.
Do you have an idea of the approximate size in the south quarter there that we'd be looking to permit?
Well, we'll try to permit as much as we can. We'll have to, a lot will depend on some of these other things that are in there.
We will maximize our efforts because it's a
Yes, sir.
process.
Absolutely.
Process.
Okay, property repair and maintenance. Up first is our transition plan compliance. This is an annual budgetary item that we put in to improve the accessibility of our public areas around town. Primarily, the focus has been on schools. And we'll obviously finish what we can on Coolidge and Garfield, and then do a little more at Lions Park. But we will spend 300, and if we run out of, if we don't find enough work in these areas, we'll add more somewhere else. There's also phase 2 of the golf building, maintenance building. It should come to you probably next meeting or the meeting after to award the initial construction of the maintenance building. The idea here is to get the shell and the floor up together and the utilities stubbed out. We don't really feel like we have enough resources to do the whole complete building, but like we've learned to do, you phase it, you get the big plan put together, you phase it, buy what you can, and then come back in the next budget year for phase 2 and finish it out. And as anybody has been down there and looked, the maintenance building is in pretty sad shape.
Chris?
Yes, sir.
Restrooms, were they redone already?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
At the golf course? Yes, sir.
One on the front and one on the back. I was out there the other day. Both look very nice.
Those are a model of what we may try to use in the future. The only difference between those and what we might possibly use in the future in parks is that there's no sewer line or water line close. So they have they're built with a septic tank and then just with hand sanitizer. You'll see later in the budget some money for a new bathroom at Government Springs North. And we may look to try to use one of those prefab items hooked up to sewer and water. They actually look really good. If you haven't been to the golf course to see them, George, you were there, Mayor, so you can attest to it.
Yep.
And it's more cost-effective than conventional.
Oh, yeah.
And I can remember a time in the past when commissions have been concerned about the cost of $125,000 or so for a bathroom. So we might be able to, maybe for less, I don't know.
One other item for standardization and improvement on our traffic controls is we have another item here where we're going to replace some of our older cabinets. And those are the external cabinets and racks inside. We'll get those out, put the new electronics in a new cabinet, improve things. It won't really help us much on the efficiency, but it will help a little bit on the maintenance side.
One of the things with all this effort too that I've asked Everett and Frank to look at is currently we don't have automation in our traffic signals, and I would like to get automation so that somebody's getting a text about come fix me at the intersection of wherever before we have to, somebody find out about it and call somebody. So that's somewhere in this. We're going to try to at least start automating some of these because I think that'll be an efficiency improvement. And if we can react to a problem, ideally before anybody knows about it, that's better for the city. So we're going to do our best to be more proactive.
Okay?
Is there a thought process why so incrementally? I think for something like that, it might be worthwhile to.
The primarily it's a function of having manpower to do all the work.
Okay.
It's more cost-effective for Everett to send his guys out there to do these as opposed to hiring a contractor to do a bunch of them. And additionally, you get a little less control of what you get in the box. Whereas if you pick the electronics and you pick the cabinet and you make those to where they're integral to each other, and then of course detection. Yeah.
So do we have a plan set up in terms of how long it's going to take to get us to the capability that we're talking about?
We're working on a plan. Everett, we have 70-some intersections, is that right? 52. Okay. So we have 52 intersections. I don't know how long it takes per intersection, but I've been visiting with Frank and Everett. We're working on a plan. We don't have a plan to present to you tonight, but it sounds like it would be a great topic for a future study session.
Sounds like a good idea.
You know, as these things go along and as we start making progress, then, you know, obviously the best thing for us to do is to be able to tell you, give you a scorecard.
$30,000 will buy how many? You said there's 52. Will that get you 2, 3?
dozen.
Okay.
A little more, a little
Take a
more.
while, but as long as we got the existing wiring and everything in place, we can change them out, you know, pretty good. But we need to upgrade these cabinets, because right now, a lot of our spaces, we don't have no more areas to put more systems in there to upgrade to where we need to be.
Right.
We gotta get bigger sizes.
Older.
and all that, so we-
Yeah, older rack technology just hasn't been keeping up with what we need inside the boxes.
We'll try to, in a future study session, have a better answer for you, and maybe even some cost estimates of what it would take, because I think that's what you're
Definitely.
asking about, so. So Jennifer, I know you're taking great notes about everything. I bet you got a note for us too about future study sessions, so, thank you.
And apparently, there's lots of questions on what we're doing, so I think we should fill up a little bit of time during a study session. And obviously, replace some old batteries.
This keeps the lights from going into, is it called reset or flash? Anyway, when there's,
Keeps the lights running.
Keeps them running.
yes, power issues occur, so.
Runs down and goes into a flash.
Okay? Okay. Reconstruction and overlay. This is kind of a repeat from what we tried to do in the current budget year, Cleveland Street north of railroad crossing. You know, we budgeted money last year for utility relocation and right-of-way acquisition in preparation for construction. We ran into that stormwater problem that we have not been able to solve yet. We think we've got a line on it now. And then we also diverted some of the funds to get Leona Mitchell built. And that is under construction. If it's not, it will be shortly. That has been awarded and contractors ready to roll. So get that one back open.
So basically, we're looking at about a 2-year timeframe or so to finish from the railroad tracks.
At least, yes. It'll take us all of this year to finish utility relocation and right-of-way acquisition. And if we can get the easements that we need to deal with the stormwater, which we've budgeted funds for, yeah, those are the major steps that we have to take care of. We've also got a project to do the same activities there at Garland and Randolph. As you'll recall, we designed this intersection for improvement, increasing it as 4-lane this way and 3-lane this way off of Randolph. And now we need to relocate a few utilities, and we've got a little bit of right-of-way that we need to acquire. This will set us up for construction, either in the next 2 years, if it goes to plan. We're not sure yet. This will be on ODOT's list of federally funded urban support, but it possibly can be. We'll look into that as we get a little closer.
Chris, we typically look at about a 3-year process, right?
Yes.
Design, 1 year,
Utilities,
right-of-way utilities, and then construction.
And then if-
Bid design this year.
design this year, do utilities in the next budget year. If we are funding construction, we can roll right into construction in the following year.
What's the rationale by making that a 3-year process?
Manpower and resources. If you put all the resources in 1 year, you know, with staff levels as they are, it can be somewhat challenging to get it all done. You can't really relocate utilities until you got a pretty good design done. And that's where you determine on how much right-of-way you need to buy. Life as an engineer. And then again, the next one that we have is we're going to start looking at the design process from Gary to Randolph. The idea being that if we do the intersection and get it ready for construction, do construction of the intersection, now it's time to work on the design of the road from Gary all the way to the intersection and roll that into construction.
Chris, are these asphalt overlays?
These will be complete reconstructions. So it will depend on how the design comes back and what's happening in terms of concrete construction and like we did Willow, which is concrete curb and gutter and asphalt overlay, an asphalt base. It's not an overlay, it's a complete reconstruction of asphalt.
Have curb and gutters.
This one will probably have curb and gutters. I would expect it to. But we won't really know that until we get into the design and understand the stormwater. Because this has some large stormwater channels on the side, on the west side. Curb and gutter section is not really a problem. You just take the curb and gutter section and run it down into the borrow ditch. Problem solved. Makes the road look nice.
On that, not on this particular street, but I've noticed on Chestnut, coming off of where they're redoing the bridge, going west on Chestnut, who's in charge of it where they, while the water works, along the railroad? I don't know if you all noticed that.
The railroad crossing?
Right, about take, yes, sir.
Yes.
About take your front end out.
Yeah, we're
It's
very much aware of that.
Okay.
We do have the railroad on notice that we do need that repaired. What we will not allow them to do is take that crossing down and take Chestnut down while I've got the intersection down.
Is that eventually gonna be a 3-lane through there all the way, or just gonna exist to be 2?
Well, at this point, it's not in the long-term plan to make it 3-lane, but in the long-term plan, eventually, we're gonna have to do something.
Yeah, because with the building of the residential increase, that's gonna really build up traffic on that road. I mean,
Yes, it
it's gonna
will.
be a major road.
Okay? Fair enough? Where are we at next? As you know.
Real quick before you.
Yes, sir.
When do we think so we're looking at next year when we'll actually get a design, or is it the year after we'll get a design of what this is?
Well, this time next year, the design will be complete, and we'll be talking about how much right-of-way and utility relocations we need to budget for.
Thank you.
And at that time, we'll know for sure where we're going to put the sidewalk, what are we going to have to do with the stormwater drainage. As we found on Cleveland, Cleveland's got a lot of water that goes down it. This one's got a lot of water that goes down the west side. And so we got to figure out how to handle that. Okay?
Thank you.
Crossland Park. A couple months ago, we awarded a contract to build some parking spaces at Crossland Park for the new softball fields. This is another one of those efforts where we're going to budget funds, take advantage of good competitive prices that we got on unit price contracts, sealed bid, and finish that out. And then, as we were talking earlier, replace the restroom on Government Springs North. And we'll look at using something similar to what we've done on the golf course. But we should be able to, like Gerald said, we should be able to tie that into water and sewer, work that out a little better. As you know, we had some problems with the lights down at Kellett Park. And so after inspecting the park, the lights and the cablings, this clearly needs to be done. We need to address this. When we had our discussion in our internal budget discussions, we decided that we would do one at a time for starters. And we're recommending that we do the north field. The north field of Kellett Park is where the power comes in. And the poles in that area are in pretty bad shape. They're all in bad shape, but those are really in pretty bad shape. And we need to deal with that first. And then we'll work it through and do the other two, depending on how those go.
Are we replacing these lights with LEDs?
Yes. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll use the same type of poles and lights that we're using at Crossland Park. And get the power lines underground if at all possible, and I think we can for this budget. And we'll find out for sure when we come back to you with a contract award how much we can get out of that. But the goal is LEDs and underground. The challenge with this one, of course, is if I bring the power in underground and I deal with the first light, I got to tie in the overheads to the other two parks until I get them underground as well. And then Parks Department has a project, or Public Works has a project to replace the starting blocks at the Champlain Pool. That's an in-house deal. They buy the parts, put them in. Park projects we got coming under the capital improvement is we have some pavilions that really need new roofs on it. So what they're going to do is pull the shingles off, put metal roofs on. It's really a straightforward kind of maintenance thing. I think your guys can do it quite easily and relatively quick. So very, very easily done and should be done quickly right after we get done with the summer season, and so we don't interrupt the park. Obviously, they want to update the horseshoe pits in Meadow Lake on the south side, and then there's also a request to do some design work on a full-fledged skate park.
Didn't they just upgrade the horseshoe pits in Meadow Lake?
They did some work on them, but we have some, we've got a little bit more getting fixed up. And they do need to provide the rest of the accessibility.
Okay, all right.
Improve the accessibility on it. All these, with the exception of the design activity, will be in-house.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, reconstruction and overlay. This is our mill and overlay project. Let's see, where are we at? This first one is a $400,000 budget item. We will do the design activities from over here at Washington through down Randolph and across the tracks. We're a little nervous about design activities in this area because of the number of the width, utilities, and the basements. So it'll be a challenge, but obviously we can get it done. The construction of this is going to be somewhat hard to figure out until we get a lot more data put together.
We need to go, I think, a couple blocks further east to where the road starts to slope up. We have 2 or 3 more blocks of really, really bad chunk of Randolph. Where it goes up the hill is at probably 7th. It starts to improve quite a bit, but if you only go to 4th, you're skipping some, there'll be a really, really crappy chunk of road just in the middle. What would it take to extend that 3 more blocks?
A little more resources.
Okay, well, can we add that in? Figure out what the additional
We could-
resource is?
We could look at that. We could do it now, or we could do it at the time, or what we
I
can
feel
do,
like if we're, I mean, if
Yep.
that's what we're doing.
or we can shift the start of the project a block over.
I mean, if it needs to be done downtown, it needs to be done downtown too.
Yeah.
I just don't want to stop and leave off like 2 or 3 really crummy blocks that
Okay, we can do
need
that.
the attention.
We can do that. We'll get another estimate together. I'm not sure where the money's going to come from to fund that. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, let's figure that part out.
And then obviously, like we've done on Broadway, the next part is from here east. However far we can get, and then go the other way.
Well, from there east is gonna, I mean, it carries a huge amount of
Yes, it
traffic.
does.
Carries more traffic than Broadway does.
Yeah.
And it's so narrow there, and the right-of-way is so narrow that it's gonna be tricky, especially once you get to 16th. But this little chunk here seems like a more reasonable stop is at the bottom
And
of the hill.
you said your preference was 7th?
Wherever the bottom of the hill is.
Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense?
It makes sense. Let me think about how best to manage the resources.
Thank you.
Without my boss here, it's kind of hard for me to say that
Yeah.
we'll go get more money.
You don't want to have 2
Yeah.
blocks.
Yeah,
good
well,
here,
because
good
once it
here,
starts to
2
go
bucks
uphill,
here.
it's in better shape already. So it's just,
No, I agree.
Okay. We'll take a look at it. And we'll figure out how we can make that work, or we'll twist some arms and get some more money. This is University Mill and Overlay from Maine on up to Randolph. This one will be designed in-house. It's relatively straightforward. It's flat, relatively flat. Sidewalks are pretty much done on this one. There are new sidewalks that we did during another activity. And so that will really help on this. We'll do the in-house design work. One of our engineers will do that. And then we'll do the construction on this as well, is the goal. And then do the design work on another portion of Randolph. This one is actually in pretty bad shape right in here and right in here.
we did a little patching this year, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, your guys did, yeah. But we'll look at doing the design on that. Okay? In the sanitary sewer fund, Fund 42, this is our standard reoccurring periodic maintenance work that we do on our sewers. The first one is to camera and do point repairs and make sure that we don't have sewage leaking out into the ground. And the other one is root control, where we go along and we take the roots out of the sewers and keep them from causing blockages.
Chris, can
Yes, sir?
I ask you a question on what we were discussing before on the old
This one?
days? If I heard it right, we just purchased a new machine that does, is that a hot mix machine that we just purchased? I really think that's gonna help us out a lot. I mean, do you all agree? To help get us.
Oh,
where we need to be
absolutely.
Until we can
And,
replace a lot of.
and what we
roads.
will, and the intent is when we light that pilot project up, is use some of those funds and pick some streets that he can do and have him go over them and do the overlays.
And Everett, not putting you on the spot, but as far as the manpower, because I've heard that said about 4 times since we've been here tonight. Why are we lacking manpower? Is there a reason?
Well, it's two different, it's
Is it
really
because
two
people
different
aren't
problems.
qualified, or do we not have enough money in the budget to pay people?
We beat our street department up for 2 employees this year.
Okay.
We went up 2 because we don't take this program on. So that's what helps us quite a bit.
Okay.
Get it going. But we don't want to overdo it right up first. Since we're just starting this pilot program, we want to see how it's all going to work.
Okay.
And as we move forward, I'll approach Gerald if we need more help, if he wants to continue on this one. But right now, we're in good shape.
Because are we putting it out there that we need employees? Because Commissioner Waddell, as far as, you know, the meeting we went to with ERDA, that was part of the problem. We weren't getting any public notice out to the public that, you know,
It wasn't being communicated effectively that we.
Exactly.
We don't have enough qualified people. So if it's the same issue to where we just don't have enough people, that's one thing. But it sounds like, to me, what you're saying is that you've got the people that you need in order to be able to get this started.
This is all new program for us, so we're
Yeah.
going to learn as we go along.
I think the thing that Commissioner Norwood is trying to get at is that if you need more personnel, it's the issue of just not having the resources to be able to be more effective at this. We just need to know so we can do what we
And I'll
need to.
definitely know more by next year as we go through this year with this program.
No.
Okay, because, you know, it's unfair to you all in management. You know, everyone said, well, they're not doing their job, whatever. That's not always the case. You know, being in business, I've learned that. That's not always the case. So if you're in management, you need what you need to get the job done. So I'm looking out for you all as well. That's my job here. So that's why I asked, because I want to know.
Right. And my job, my problem is a little bit more of a challenge to solve, because finding engineers, qualified engineers that want to be in Enid and want to work for the city of Enid is a little more of a challenge. When we find them, we find some really good ones. My last acquisition my last hire on a project engineer, he came in, he wanted to be here, family's here, wants to raise his family here, and he loves doing streets. So we just pile on the streets and let him do it. There's more work than he can do, but we're keeping him busy.
Hey, I missed a great discussion. If you guys go through here and find any money that we can put on streets, please let me know, because nobody's a bigger advocate of putting money in streets than me. And nobody's a bigger advocate of making sure we have the money we need. But since we're talking about our jobs, part of my job is to make sure that we have a balanced budget, that we can afford what we're doing. In fact, we're going to be answering a question for you, Rob, about can we afford Call Lake and these other things here in a minute. So please keep that in mind, because it isn't as simple as, hey, let's approve every project and let's the money in there. And I know nobody's saying that. I just want to let you know I'm in tune with my job too. So anyway.
Okay?
So that machine puts down 2 inches? Is that the most it puts down? Is that?
Hey, Everett, why don't you come up to the mic, please, when you're addressing the commission, and everybody else that addresses them.
I thought I'd heard.
No, we're doing the 2-inch overlays like we normally would do on a grinding overlay. 2 inches, no, we can go up 6, 8 inches on this thing, and we can go out 14 feet wide. So, yeah, so it's gonna help us quite a bit on our street repairs. But we're just right now concentrating on the non-curb and guttering streets that we can go in where most of our potholes are at, that we can get patched up, get a good overlay on it, and it's gonna be a good 18 years before we have to go back to them. So it's gonna help us a whole lot.
Stuff.
So it'll adjust our manpower too, where we don't have to have somebody out patching all these little potholes. We're gonna go get these knocked out, and we won't have to go back to those, so we can adjust our manpower on how we're doing things.
Efficiency is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, back to the sanitary sewer. These are just standard repeats. We do have some lift station at these 3 locations that need to be addressed. We need to do some minor maintenance on them. And we also need to increase the capacity of the lift station on 54th Street. We expect this one to be a 2-phase project. And so this basically start off with some of the design work and any additional property we need to acquire. This is a very critical lift station to our industrial side. And so it only makes sense to us, since we're running close, it's time to do it. You'll recall that we did a relief line, sanitary sewer relief line 2 years ago. Now it's time to do the lift station. Lou with Public Utilities also needs a little help out there at the water reclamation facility. This helps him to replace a couple of belt presses and to remove some old water lines that are kind of in the way. This will probably become an ongoing project incrementally. There's no real urgency to clean it all up at once, but we do need to start cleaning it up. Okay? The box structure on Randolph. We talked about this study session on Monday. We're budgeting $1 million for it. We should be coming before you with an amendment to an existing engineering firm's contract in the next meeting or the meeting after to start the design process. Anticipate design will take about 6 months, and then we'll jump right into construction. This
That small section, $1 million?
underground,
Yes, sir.
moving back far enough up and down. Understand, I'm conservative. I'd rather give you money back than come ask for more.
I understand, but I'm like, man, I'm in the wrong.
Well, if we're doing,
How far, what are the length do you anticipate that we're doing?
Well, we're gonna have to go from this side of the right-of-way to this side of the right-of-way, and I anticipate we'll go probably 20 feet or so further north, depending on how bad that gets to be when we pull it out. There's a,
trees you're gonna kill, that's, yeah.
I think we had this conversation, sir. There's a 8x15 concrete box in there. This is a big box that you can easily walk 4 people abreast in.
Okay, so it's just not over the street of Randolph, is it?
We're focused in on over the street of Randolph. On the south side, it goes underneath this building. To get to good box, what am I gonna do to that approach to that building? I don't know. I'm gonna tear some stuff up, I do know that.
Bill has the south, but still has a good entrance
Okay.
from the other direction.
Yeah, and we anticipate that we'll have to go a little bit further north here to find a good point to tie into the box. Obviously, we'll minimize what we have to do, but we're gonna do what we need to
It's
do.
going out for bid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a nice contract. Really? I'm on council now, so I can't do it.
If I'm,
It's gonna be a big hole, man.
Oh, man.
if I'm not mistaken, and, you know, additionally, Commissioner, I've got to worry about this approach from 4th Street, because it approaches right at the edge of that box. I mean, I've got a problem.
How quickly is that construction actually gonna get done?
Probably about as long as the box, the Broadway box that we did out east. Yeah,
So we're gonna have Randolph narrowed for a year?
probably. I've had Leona Mitchell closed for a year and a half.
Randolph carries a couple more cars than Leona Mitchell.
I can't let you on the outside of the lanes.
So Fourth will also
It's
be
dangerous.
closed for,
Yes.
that block of Fourth will be closed for a year?
Absolutely. It's dangerous under there.
That'll go over well.
You saw the, I presume you saw the photos last up
Yeah.
on Monday. I mean, you look under there and you go,
Yeah.
what's that daylight coming through? That's not real good. There's daylight coming through at this intersection, or this curb right here.
Okay.
One of the things that Commissioner Zell did ask last time, and I haven't gotten with you or you yet, Everett, but you might note this too, is if there's a way to change up the detour. What was mentioned last time was we're putting traffic down Walker, and I guess the other 4th Street, which we have to put them somewhere.
And Maple.
And
Yep.
Maple, and that's going, and those roads are already
Yeah,
probably in poor
Walker's
condition.
really, really, really.
I don't know if there's a better way to do that detour or not, but if there is, let's look into it.
Yeah, I mean, Walker and Maple are both bad.
Okay, we'll look at it again. We looked at it, I mean, keeping the trucks off, it's the critical point.
Yeah. Well, actually, chunk of Maple's fine, but Maple going further east gets pretty bad. And that Walker is carrying, you know, an order of magnitude more traffic than it ever has, and it's showing it.
We can take the trucks off of there too.
I don't know what we need to do. I just don't want to, in the process of having this shut down for a year, then have another $500,000 in road work we have to do because we didn't think through the detour well enough.
Do that. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay? We'll award the next phase for construction on this detention up there at Chestnut West. Currently, it's under construction, excavation. We really like the contractor. He's been very good to work with. He's very efficient, and we've got good unit prices.
Is that north of the Pheasant Run development? Is
Yes.
that-
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. That's because we get lots of questions, and you probably do too, about the big pile of dirt out there and the big hole, but that's the first phase, right?
Yeah,
That's
when
phase one.
we do this kind of stuff, you have to scrape the topsoil off, dig, and then when you're done, you put the topsoil back on. So there's a mound of topsoil out there, is what you're looking at. And we've actually been able to utilize some of the excavation out of here to support some of our other independent projects and independent people who've been wanting to do like bicycle or off-road bike trails. So we're getting benefit out of it.
This is just south of the other water retention that.
Yes, it is.
Across the street from Prairie View, right?
Prairie View Detention is right here.
So you need to have two separate ones side by side?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not an engineer.
Well,
But it's like, we got a pool
I've
here,
stayed
we're
at a
gonna make
Holiday
another
Inn.
one right next.
there is a very large mound peak that goes right there.
Okay.
And a high-pressure gas line, a large 8-inch high-pressure gas line that goes through right about here, just on the south side of that peak, so. And they go into different drainage basins.
Okay. I'm sure there's a reason, I just,
Well, and maybe, as we're thinking about future study session topics, maybe an update on the master plan for stormwater, because these are all master plan stormwater
They are.
improvements, right?
They are.
okay. Yeah.
And it's still just, they're incremental improvements that make our ability to slow the flow of water through town better all the time.
Right.
But when we have rain like we have in the last few days, we find out right away that the problems are exacerbated. Enid's pretty flat, and it's built on a lot of creeks.
It has a lot of creeks around it. We've had a lot of rain in the past 2 days. I have heard of no inundation. I know of 2 locations that I'm concerned of. One of them, Public Works has already addressed for a temporary solution. And once we get ready to do the soccer park, we'll look at that again to see what other permanent solutions we need to deal with. And then the other one is out on 16th Street, which is just a real challenge to solve because it's half a mile to 3/4 of a mile and it's just flat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that at a study session, because a lot of people in the neighborhoods and stuff are wondering the same thing. How come they're putting one right next to the other one? So I'd like to be able to intelligently answer that question.
Yeah, I believe, and engineers will be able to intelligently
Yeah.
answer. I'll unintelligently answer, there's water coming from different places, and that's. what
Coming
this
from
is.
different places, different flow capacities, different future capacities that are going to
Okay.
show up as we develop. As you develop north of Willow over by Prairie View, none of that water gets into this one.
There's a constituency that's very interested and knows what's attuned with what's going on here, because you and I have been out to his house.
Absolutely.
Looked at the erosion and stuff, and so, yes, we will definitely do that.
Okay.
So this is great, because I'm also getting topics for future study sessions. Anytime there is something that you guys do want to hear in a study session too, let me know, because it's kind of a PSA for that as well, so.
But it's primarily that large ridge and their different subbasins.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this is the additional funding that we had talked about when we were talking about improving Cleveland, south of Willow Road. We've budgeted some stormwater funds to acquire the easements for get across that property and to increase the detention down on Willow Detention, which is just north of our service center. We have not solved this problem yet, but we think we're getting close. It involves private property and private property owners, and sometimes it takes time. This is the location. You know, here's the detention, and what we need to do is we need to get over to here and back down and then expand that detention a little bit. We also have another stormwater project to improve stormwater along Cleveland, just south of Garriott. This particular intersection, you get a rain just a little bit more than what we got, and you'll end up with ponding in all 4 corners of that intersection. The problem is that this is a little 18-inch pipe down to about here, and then it dumps into a 36-inch pipe. So the goal here is to take and improve this enlarge this 36, take this all the way back up here to the intersection.
This will work in conjunction with the improvements that as you know, that we're working on with the developer at Cleveland and Garriott Lahoma Courts. And it'll actually help with the issues there, particularly the intersection, like you're talking
Particularly the
about, and the
intersections.
development that's coming, so.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot more concrete parking and stuff in that area. So,
And, you know, with Lahoma Courts, I might add that ordinance requires they detain on site. And so those developments do detain on site. We're just making the drainage easier for us to deal with out of the intersection and receiving those. Okay? This is a repeat from this year. The firm that was working on the design for the soccer park did not get done early enough with their stormwater. So we're gonna drop that one and moved it over. This will be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, Enid Sports Association, who updated you, Jessica, did last meeting. What he's saying is they are taking care of paying for the design for these infrastructure improvements necessary to support the soccer park. So, that we've gotten that stuff for the water and sewer, which you awarded at, I think, Tuesday night. And so, we'll come back with transportation improvements and stormwater in the next year. And there's anticipated another $1 million commitment the following year. We committed roughly to $3 million, and their investment so far and donations have been about $3 million. And I believe they're probably going to be going out into the community. They'd gone to the Rotary Club talking about some fundraising in the future, and I think there was a newspaper article. So it's going to be a wonderful improvement for Enid. I don't know I don't think they're planning to open until, well, definitely not till 2020, and maybe it's 2021. So we anticipate that'll be great. We anticipate they'll be working with other entities like the existing soccer club and the universities and the Enid High School to play the games out there. We will maintain the current soccer fields for practice, just to give you an update from what I know. And as we go further along, we'll ask Enid Sports Association from time to time to come back in and update you on where they're at.
We plan on taking that water south of Roop, just go down the borrow ditch on Garland. That's where that water wants to go. I don't have a location map. There's a ridge that goes down roughly halfway down that from northwest to southeast, and the majority of that property drains south. The rest of it drains north into our existing channel.
Some of it is gonna go north,
Some of it has to go north, yes.
across Pottsville, or is it gonna be south of it?
It'll be west of Garland. It will go north into our drainage channel, and then it'll go through Oakwood West detention. Okay? We have an issue with a collapsed storm drain here at Huron. And this is basically, let's redo it and get it replaced. This one's a little bit more of a challenge. What we've got is we've got 100 feet of stormwater pipe that's got some holes in it. It's creating some real issues in this resident's front yard. And so obviously we need to deal with that. The process is we'll find out what we've got in terms of fall and elevations, excavate and replace. Technically, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a lot of pipe and it's pretty good size. This is phase 2 of the channel improvement over there on Hoover Street. We've got the design completed and working on a little bit on getting some of the construction. This is to do some of the some more maintenance, some more of the construction on it. You know, the way it was getting really difficult to maintain because of the slopes and the utilities and the wandering, meandering channel. And so we'll apply some more resources to this, and we will do what we can based on what the budget amount is. This is a in-house public utilities effort to do fire hydrant and valve replacement. We decided a couple years ago that we needed to provide sufficient resources for Lou and his guys to replace these fire hydrants that needed replacing, and valves, because we find that there are valves that are out there that break or have been broken that need to be replaced, and this is the most efficient way of doing that. Okay? As we normally do, we put $1 million in for the well field improvement under the Water Capital Fund. This is a continuous maintenance and improvement project. The focus here is to maintain and expand the well field and refurbish wells as needed. And when we do find additional water rights, drill new wells. The focus for this year's effort is going to be is to design a raw water relief line coming from the Ames field to the 42-inch, going on the north at 412. It's roughly 10 miles. We'll put in a 24-inch, the current plan is to put in a 24-inch line. What we will do with this line is, number one, it gives us a backup for in the event that 1950 model cross-country concrete pipe fails. And additionally, when we bring CAW online, we need to get all the water to that location at Plant 2, and this puts us in a great position to have that done. So we'll knock out the design in the new budget year. And additionally, we've got a little bit of piping that we need to finish that we had to change up on a well that we were bringing online out in the Ames field, or the Drummond field, excuse me. And we'll use some of the funds for that. And then we also have a couple of wells out in the Clio well field that we need to deal with getting some power to. We've come across the grumpy landowner. Okay? This is a problem that's been plaguing us for quite some time. These are currently, and this is the Tyson Food plant there on the east side of town. These water lines are currently not in an easement, and they belong to us, according to everything we can figure out, but they're on private property. And over the years, Tyson has built things on top of these water lines, which makes it a challenge to repair. And so what we're planning on doing, what we're proposing to do here is let's reconfigure the water that they receive and come off this 12-inch line and go directly to their meters, hand those other lines off to them as fire lines, and transfer the responsibility and maintenance to them as well. So if they want to build on their fire line, okay. This solves both problems and gets us out of doing maintenance on private property, which we do not like to do. Okay? We have to do a water loss study. DEQ has come up with a policy that when you borrow money from them, they want the community to do a water loss study. It's actually a good thing. We're not really against it. We've budgeted a little bit of funding for this. It looks like it won't take quite all of that, but we'll get this knocked out, and this will put us ready for when we get ready to go in front of the board for our next loan, construction loans. Okay? We have another project here that's kind of been bothering us for a while. This is the master water meter for Wacomas, or now this is for Gray Ridge subdivision, and it's downstream of that 8-inch line, and they just have an issue with pressure and flow. And so the goal is to take the Wacomas master meter and move it down to here in this area, tie these two lines together. That way we maximize those two lines, we improve the flows for both customers. So we also have a project here to replace a couple of our older water lines that we're somewhat concerned about. There are two locations here. One of them is Ramona Drive and the other one is Madison. This one is Ramona. This is Van Buren and Sequoia. O&K and Park on. Okay? We have a preventive maintenance project that we're going to start here on our raw water lines coming into town. This is an in-house effort by Public Utilities to start replacing the saddles and the air relief valves on those lines. They've been out there in the ground for quite a while and starting to rust. They have not failed that I'm aware of. Lou, we have had one failure, and so we definitely need to get started on this. And the other one is to build a building for the service center. It's not intended to be a occupied building. It's intended to be shelter, covered area for some of our equipment that we don't really want outside.
Shed.
It won't have running water or sewer for that price, I'm pretty sure.
No, we will not. It's just a place to put our backcountry trucks and keep stuff out of the cold, so when we.
It's mostly out of the cold and the ice, because the ice on the VACCons are pretty hard. Okay? So, in summary, 52 projects this year. A little over $14 million. Any questions? I got a lot to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now would be the opportunity, if there's anything that we discussed Monday that we would like to revisit before we move on down the agenda to EMA and EEDA, now would be that time. All right, then we're ready to move down the agenda, Mayor.
Okay. Item number 3, recess and to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item number 4, trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority special meeting are all in attendance. Item number 5, Enid Municipal Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 5.1, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2019-2020 Enid Municipal Authority financial plan.
Yes. So we had a question come in this week about the projections on Call Lake and how that matched up with the budget and ensuring that we had enough funds in there to do that. So what I put together is kind of a summary slide to try and make this as easy to follow as possible. So in this first column right here, this is projections that have come from our financial advisors. They're ones that were done probably around 2016 when we first started this, when they did the 16 through 2021 projections. And then this is, and on the far column is what's actually in the budget in comparison to what that original projection was.
Well, and originally too, I think it's been updated in January too, so we've updated as we go, but yes.
Operating revenues, you can see we've budgeted about 1.5 million less than what the financial planner shows us projected. A lot of that has to do with just the conservative nature that we take towards doing budgeting. We'd much rather be in a position where we come to you at the end of the year and have excess dollars to award projects than come back and not be able to fund a project that you've already approved in the budget and want to do and have to decide what's going to be cut out because we have not received enough revenues there. So that's where that difference comes in. As we move on down, operating expenditures, we came in about 200,000 under where we had projected to be. Those were projected to have a percentage increase in that, and based on the requests that were turned in, that's where we ended up. So that would be the difference there. We come down to other pledged revenues on debt. There's two things that make that number up. There's interest earned, and since we have a little higher cash balance than we've had in the past, there's slightly higher interest. The sales tax that was projected in there is exactly what we budgeted. He has a projection of a 2% increase year over year, and we did budget a 2% increase over current year in the sales tax. Then we come down, next is the total debt service, 11.1 million. These are debts that are pledged revenues through the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. 11.1 is the total debt payments. You can see that we have budgeted 17.5 million. Every debt note, the total of the payments that will be due this year is 11.1. There is excess funds in there to prepare us for future years and to make sure that we stay in a positive cash balance in the EMA and where we need to be able to close that $200 million loan whenever we get to the point that we're ready to issue and have finished all the environmental with the next phase.
Aaron, do you recall what the advisor said the maximum debt payment would be? Do you know roughly how much that is? After the $200 million loan?
Right, after the $200 million loan, the annual debt payment will go up to just over 20 million per year, and we're already at a $17 million. So in the next year, we would have 3 million less available that we would then have to devote to capital. We also have some notes falling off, and on my next slide, we'll talk about the timing of that and kind of how it lines up. As we continue to move down, the unpledged revenues and expenditures, this is related to the 2012 note to do the construction on the event center. The difference here is he had a little bit higher interest rate plugged in than what we're actually seeing. That's a variable rate interest note, and so we've plugged in what our actual debt payments are going to be over the next year. That's that difference. And then as we come down, you see he had $22 million in transfers out to other funds. That covers things that for operations for general fund, EEDA, the event center, and all of the capital here that you've heard tonight. We're just projecting at that point 22.5. What we actually came in at this year was 25.1. The excess money that we had there to be able to put into projects, we wanted to do that while we had the opportunity. So that's why you see a little bit higher amount in the transfers this year. It still gives us a balanced budget and still gets to where we need to be able to fund all of that. Is there questions on any of this?
I guess my question kind of came from this chart that was sent to me.
Great, that's on my very next slide.
Okay.
So-
Well, maybe you're going to answer it. I was trying, as I look at this, you guys show that the red line's at $10 million.
Correct.
And that's the capital funding projections from 2021 out to whenever.
Correct.
I'll be But what I was trying to do is now tie the 10 million of capital funding to what we have today for capital funding.
Okay.
I had difficulty doing that because I'm an engineer.
So if we go back in, the capital that we just talked about tonight was 14.7 million that you saw in the projection from him. What we're asking for long-term is for that number to be 10 million. So as you can see, we have
14 versus 10.
correct. And so we also have 17 in debt, as we'll have 20. So basically 3 million will shift off of that capital and go over to the debt payments for next year. And you can see for the next couple of years until some of these debts pay off, we're not going to be able to fund 10 million. The first year that we'll be able to fund 10 million is in 2024. And that is when the debt for the water tower falls off and we've had those paid off. And then you see quite a larger jump when we get out here. This is when the AMI debt falls off, and in the following year is when the wastewater treatment plant debt falls off. And so as those come due, that gives us more room to be able to increase and address those capital needs for the few years that we have a shortfall in our target.
Now, this is all assuming that we're at 315?
This is all, yeah, all dependent on 315, and it's all dependent on, we don't know what the interest rate is going to be on that 200 million, so the interest on that $9.9 million payment a year of what's projected could vary significantly too. So until those are locked in, the price for the project and the interest rate on that final debt payment, it can make significant changes in those numbers.
My concern is how much are we squeezed for 5 or 6 years? And, can we make it being squeezed like that?
Well, I think we can make it, but I think that we're not trying to sugarcoat it. I think there's going to be 3 or 4 tough years. I think that chart starts with 2021, which is the budget year after this one we're talking about. And I think there'll be some challenges where it comes short of $10 million. I think $10 million is a minimum level we would like to have to spend for other capital projects in the community. This year, we're talking about 14, which is still not even nearly enough, as we've talked about. But when we were looking at this, and Aaron, we may update that again in a future study session when we come back and revise these projections and come to you with the financial advisor, we came up with the $10 million benchmark based on look at some historical numbers, where we weren't even doing Call Lake and we were just looking at our revenues, what do we typically do? And it was roughly around 10 million. Aaron can tell you more about it because she put it together. And that's how we came up with the benchmark. We know we need to be able to do more, if possible. With the current projections the way they are, it looks like we can do a lot more when we get about a third or more into this 30 years. And that
Assuming we don't have to borrow any more money for any big capital improvement projects in the interim.
Well, think we have the ability to.
Yes.
Well, no,
Yes.
honestly, what's the tan chunk? Which debt is
That's
it?
the wastewater treatment
Yeah,
plant.
so when that wastewater treatment facility drops off in 2033,
Yeah.
we certainly hope that in, 13 years, we don't have to do another wastewater treatment facility what was the debt when we did the water meters? I mean, that was another big one, or the water towers, or
Right.
this is,
Yeah. That's a
there's
good,
still
that's a
kind of
good
a couple
point,
big
Commissioner.
ifs here.
That's a good point. There's no doubt in the next 30 years, we're going to have to do some other big project. And so it won't, when we get to whatever year it is, it won't look that rosy. Can we do it? Yes. Is it going to be a difficult project? Yes. There's no question about it. There really is no question to me, and I don't believe to Aaron, I don't believe to John Wolf, and I don't believe to OWRB, the city can pay back the $315 million financed, if that's what it turns out to be. The real question is, what else can we do and how much? And that's how we came up with the 10. We think this shows you that for about 4 years, maybe 5, it's going to be tough. But again, these are projections, and one of the challenging things here is we look at this because it's important, but we get into the nuts and bolts on a year-by-year basis. And there's a lot of things that can impact this. Clearly, we hope that the CMAR process that we're going through is going to help us define how much it is, and so that we can prepare for whatever that number is.
Where are we in that process?
Chris, can you give them a quick?
Absolutely. We've, as you know, we went out, I sent out 20 letters to 20 different firms asking for qualification statements. We ended up with 4. I was hoping for 6, but considering how much we surprised the community, the construction community, and they were 4 good ones. They're fully qualified as best we can tell, and the source selection committee believes that they are qualified to do the work. So they have been notified. We're in the process of developing the RFP, which is the how are you really going to do this, and a few more other pieces of information that we've realized that we'd like to see. And we're also in the middle of building the agreement for the CMAR contractor. So we've got to get that agreement done because that agreement needs to go out with the RFP. We want them to fully understand what they're going up against and what they're signing up for.
When do we project that we're going to actually start moving on in that process to where they're going to actually start doing it?
I don't anticipate releasing the RFP for probably another 3 weeks, if I'm lucky. I've got to get that contract worked first. The RFP has been developed and is draft. Once we review it and get comments back and get those integrated, then it's a question of the contract. We have a specialized firm that's on board that has been hired to do the work. I've met with them. They feel, to me, they appear to be really excited about it, and they've done this kind of work before. And I think we can get there. I'm not too worried about it.
If we're going to get an update on that, we probably should, that's probably not part of the agenda tonight, so I don't want to get too far off of what we have published for an agenda.
We will definitely be updating you
need
soon
to
on
get
that
an update.
process. But just to recap that and then move on is, we said when we talked about this at the study session maybe several months ago, that it would probably generate a 3 to 6 month delay. It looks like it's going to end up generating about a 6 month delay in the project schedule. So I'm very hopeful that it will be worthwhile, and I still think it will, but we're going to find out soon.
All right, is there any other questions on EMA or anything we need to revisit there while we're on this topic?
Just one on the red line. Is this a projection of our average annual revenue? Is that what that's?
That is showing how much we would have available to be able to transfer out. So there's some other transfers taken into effect, but basically 10 million of this 22 is what is projected to be in there. So it's how much can we afford to do in capital projects, basically.
That's outside of what we're doing.
Yeah. Any other questions on EMA? All right, we're ready to move on.
Okay. All right, we're going to recess to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority. Trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority special meeting are all in attendance. Enid Economic Development Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 1, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2019-2020 Enid Economic Development Authority Financial Plan.
Right, and we went over this budget again on Monday. This is just a placeholder in case we need to revisit anything or if there's any action to take on this item.
Discussion? Nope. None?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Item number 10, adjourn as the Enid Municipal Authority and the Enid Economic Development Authority. Item 11, adjourn to convene as the Enid's City Commission. Item 12, adjourn.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission meeting. All meetings are broadcast on local cable channel 12 and in high definition on channel 112. In addition, the council meeting is live streamed on the web at enidtv.org. If you have any questions or comments regarding this broadcast, please visit the City of Enid website at enid.org.